Thank you. We'll take these issues and your comments into consideration as we look at the CTE proposal after the May revision. Okay, we will move on now back to issue number, skip 4, we did that, issue number 5, education mandates. Okay. You can go tell them. Well, that we may finish early, so we'll just vote. Okay, we'll start with the Department of Finance.
Good morning, Rebecca Hamilton with the Department of Finance. The 2016-17 governor's budget provides $219 million in ongoing Proposition 98 funding for the K-12 mandate block grant and $33 million in Proposition 98 ongoing funds for the community college mandate block grant. In addition to those funds provided, the governor's budget provides $1.3 billion in one-time Proposition 98 discretionary funding for K through 12 local educational agencies and $76 million in one-time Proposition 98 discretionary funds for the California community colleges. To the extent that these entities have outstanding mandate debt, our proposal is structured to have the concurrent benefit of paying down that mandate debt in addition to providing those discretionary funds to the entities. The administration's proposal emphasizes that all local educational agencies should benefit from the availability of these one-time funds. And the intent is that the K-12 local educational agencies will use these funds for local needs and priorities, such as content standards implementation, technology, and deferred maintenance. Similarly, the intent is that community colleges will use these funds for local needs and priorities, such as technology, campus security infrastructure, and developing open educational resources. Consistent with previous budgets, the funding is being allocated on a per average daily attendance and full-time equivalent student basis to ensure the most equitable distribution of funds to all the local educational agencies. And finally, the administration proposes language requiring that a reasonable reimbursement methodology based wholly or partly on claimed costs be developed with claimed costs that have been audited by the State Controller's Office. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Dan Kaplan with the Legislative Analyst's Office. You should have all have received a handout on our presentation entitled Education Mandates. What I'm going to do today is to provide an overview of education mandates, discuss the governor's proposal to provide backlog funding for education mandates, similarly the governor's proposal for the mandate block grant, and finally to discuss the reasonable reimbursement mandate proposal. But first, an overview of education mandates. These were passed by voters, or these were enacted by voters via Prop 4 in 1979, and this created a constitutional requirement for the state to reimburse local governments for mandated activities. These include school districts, or schools more broadly. The traditional method by which these schools would obtain this backlog funding was to first perform the activity, document costs, submit these costs to the state via a claims process, and for the state to then reimburse the local entities. However, the state deferred payments on these payments from 2003 to 2010, and as such, a sizable backlog mounted. The state has recently paid, within recent years, $4.5 billion towards these mandate backlog payments. However, our office estimates that the current backlog stands at approximately $1.9 billion. As the governor mentioned, the governor proposes to allocate another $1.4 billion in the budget year, 1.3 for K-12 and another 76 for community colleges, and per student basis with all local education agencies treated the same. While our office notes that this approach had notable advantages in the past when the vast majority of local education agencies had outstanding mandate backlogs, we don't believe it's appropriate going forward into the future. As an example of this, on page 3 of the handout, you'll see the number of entities, local education agencies with claims outstanding. And what you'll see is that only 50% of school districts have claims outstanding, 69% of county offices of education, and 14% of community college districts. The community college districts are particularly notable when looking at these mandate disparities or mandate backlog disparities. On page 4 of the handout, you'll see that the top community college claimer accounts for over 50% of the community college, statewide community college backlog. When we look at the top 4 community college districts out of the 72 statewide, we see that they account for less than 7% of the statewide community college students, however, over 90% of the community college backlog. It's because of these disparities that paying off the mandate backlog on a per-student basis is going to become increasingly inefficient over time. We estimate that it would cost the state approximately $180 billion to fully retire the mandate backlog using this approach, which we don't believe is a feasible number for the state to attempt to allocate. As a result, we propose an alternative payment plan that we believe strikes a balance between spreading funding out evenly with fulfilling the state's constitutional requirement to pay down the mandate backlog. Such an approach is consistent with the broad requirements of mandated activities, while it does not reward particularly high claimers. However, we still are able to pay down the backlog with a feasible amount of funding. We propose to provide funding over the next 2 to 3 years to all schools and county offices of education. And as a condition of receiving this funding, these schools and county offices of education would be required to write off all claims outstanding through 2015-16. The amount we propose to give K-12 districts and county offices of education is $450 per student, which is equivalent to the median per student claims value outstanding. In addition, county offices of education would be eligible to receive $20 per county-wide student under our payment plan. And this is consistent with how they are treated under the mandate block grant and the fact that county offices of education often have to provide services not only for the students that report directly to the county offices, but also county-wide students. We also propose that for county office of education, would the state establish $1 million floor such that no county office of education receives fewer than $1 million. In total, if all school districts and county offices of education were to choose to participate in the plan, it would cost approximately $2.6 billion. Two key differences between our proposal and that of the governor's, though, is that we do not propose to provide funding for community colleges via mandate backlog payments, and this is because of the disparities that I pointed out earlier. Instead, we propose that the state to not commit payments towards paying down the mandate backlog until the vast majority of community college districts once again have outstanding mandate backlog claims. The second key difference between our proposal and that of the governor's is that we do not provide funding for charter schools, and this is for 2 primary reasons. The first being that charter schools are ineligible to submit mandate backlog claims, and as such do not have mandate backlogs existing. Therefore, we do not believe it's appropriate to provide backlog payments to entities that have no backlog. The second key reason that we do not provide funding to charter schools is that charter schools were reimbursed at the same rate as school districts over the past few years' mandate backlog payments, despite the fact that charter schools are not required to perform all of the same activities as traditional districts and therefore incur lower costs. In essence, we believe the state has been overpaying in prior years. More broadly, for all entities that choose not to participate in the plan, we propose that the state continue to recognize the existing mandate backlog and then once again return to committing backlog payments once the vast majority of local education agencies have outstanding claims on the book. Turning to the mandate block grant, which is an alternative payment reimbursement process than the traditional claims process, we see that the mandate block grant enjoys near universal participation rates. We believe this is a useful tool both for local entities and for the state in that it eliminates much of the bureaucratic processes that are involved with the traditional claims process. However, the rates for the mandate block grants have not changed since they were created in 2012-13. These mandate block grants cover dozens of separate mandates, and the administration notes that certain of these mandates represent one-time costs. However, others represent ongoing expenses. And as such, we believe that it's important to maintain the purchasing power of the mandate block grant and to apply the same cost of living adjustment that many of the other education block grants receive under the governor's budget. This would be about half a percentage point in the budget year and would cost the state only about $1.2 million. Finally, I'm sorry. Okay. Finally, turning to the governor's proposal to audit all claims for the reasonable reimbursement methodology, which is part of the claims process, but uses somewhat of a formula to reimburse local districts on a per-student basis. We believe this creates an unnecessary requirement and can cause delays to the process, which may create such a burden that entities choose to no longer use the RRM process. The issue with this is, while it's not as big of an issue for school districts because of the block grant that I mentioned earlier, it's a larger issue for local governments, which would also be affected by this audit requirement. These local governments don't enjoy the block grants, and as a result, the RRM process is one of the only ways to streamline the mandate reimbursement process for the state and for local governments. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Deborah Brown, on behalf of State Superintendent Tom Torlakson with the Department of Education. I would just note we do support the efforts to reduce the mandate block grant, and so we're pleased to see that in the governor's budget. We also support the mandate block grant, and so we would, as we really see this as a way for a better understanding of state cost and local costs as well. So we continue to encourage districts to participate in the block grant instead of reverting back to separate filings, and would add that we also support the LAO's proposal to provide a COLA to the block grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'm Dan Troy. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Fiscal Policy at the California Community College Chancellor's Office. We're supportive of the administration's approach on the issue. We note that the one-time money that would be received by all of our districts proportionally across the board would help them meet key local needs, including addressing campus security issues, deferred maintenance, as the administration articulated, addressing open education, developing open educational resource options for our students. We think the approach that the administration has taken is a good one, primarily because it recognizes that regardless of the actual claims that districts have filed, that they're all subject to the mandates. Some simply have more staff available or dedicated toward the claiming process. So I think replenishing those coffers in an across-the-board manner, in a proportionate manner, is a fair one.
Okay, thank you. We certainly realize that this is twofold. Certainly, we have good news. We have one-time money available to address the mandates, and the wall of debt has gone down. But the further you pay it down, there's not any streamlined ending to this, and so we take the LAO's suggestion under advisement, and we'll consider this as we proceed down the path for the next few months. Do we have any public? Did you have any questions on this, Mr. Chavez? Not at all. Do we have any public comment on this item? And just to note, this will be the last item. We're going to hear the Prop 39 issue, the next hearing. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman McCarty and members of the committee. My name is Robert Miyashiro with the Education Mandated Cost Network. I'd just like to speak briefly on the two items with regard to mandates. First, I would like to endorse the comments in your staff agenda prepared by your staff and the LAO regarding the reasonable reimbursement methodology. I think adoption of the administration's proposal here will inadvertently eliminate this useful tool in streamlining the mandate process. And second, I would like to endorse the LAO's recommendation to provide a cost of living adjustment to the mandate block grant. Again, costs faced by districts are affected by inflation, and it is a proper adjustment. We urge your adoption of that recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Moira Top on behalf of the California Charter Schools Association. Not surprisingly, we urge you to reject the LAO proposal. To suggest that charter schools didn't incur costs as a result of the mandates is simply not true. The Commission on State Mandates process is a Byzantine, arcane process that we haven't been a part of, but that charter schools have been responsible to comply with a significant number of the mandates that exist, and we strongly support their inclusion going forward. The reality is that the one-time monies that have been allocated over the last couple years and those that are proposed in the governor's budget have had more to do with providing schools with funds for state priorities like Common Core implementation, backlog of deferred maintenance, technology in the classroom, and as such have allocated the funds in a modestly fair manner to almost all schools. The fact that there was backlog, mandate backlog reduction was an added bonus. I did say that it was a nearly fair process. The reality is, though, that the past budgets and then the governor's current proposed budget unfairly penalizes schools that charter schools and district schools that have new populations or are growing. We would urge you to adopt the governor's mandate proposal with an amendment that includes those schools that are new and growing, and to support all schools within or all students within the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Jonathan Lightman on behalf of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges, aligning our comments with Dan Troy. Just to note that money in the mandates is coming to the community colleges back via the Prop 98 guarantee, of which community colleges are anticipated to receive a share. We would, however, agree that a COLA to the mandates would also be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark McDonald, McCallum Group, on behalf of a number of local community college districts, including Los Rios and San Diego community college districts. Also, my colleague Lizette Navarrete asked me to testify on behalf of the Community College League, and we would both associate our comments with those of both Vice Chancellor Troy and Mr. Lightman. Thank you.
Eric Premack with the Charter Schools Development Center. I'll associate myself with Ms. Top's comments regarding charter schools. What I'd also like to note, though, is that the reimbursement of mandates is a constitutional mandate, not an optional one, and we believe that charter schools, as now reflected in the block grant system, are eligible recipients, and the fact that charter schools were excluded from the mandate process for many years arguably creates a case wherein charter schools should be getting more money, not less. We would urge you to reject the LAO's recommendations here. We would also like to see charter schools have direct access to the RRM process if you opt to continue going forward. We also think that the mandate block grant rates should be rebenched and revisited each year to reflect new mandates as they're created and take old mandates off the books. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we'll hold this issue open and address it down the road. Thank you so much. We will adjourn this hearing.